Everyone across my 400 affiliates. That music, of course, a theme that will forever be linked to Rush Limbaugh. And when word reached me not long after I went off to the show yesterday, maybe 3 hours, that Rush had died, I immediately took to Twitter to simply say, he was a gentleman's gentleman. He is much loved by everybody in this business. Now, the broadcast business has two sides, radio and television. Soon it will have a fully developed third side of online. Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro and people like that. In our third of the world, the first of the two halves that existed prior to online, there isn't anybody who doesn't love Rush. Oh, you might find someone at a failed left-wing station, but they loved Rush in the real world of unsubsidized radio because he kept our jobs. I like to say, and I've said many times, Rush built the mall. Everybody else is just a storefront in it. You know, I am Sports Chalet. I always use the analogy, Levin and Hannity are Nordstrom and Bloomies, and you'll find somebody else to put in the different storefronts, but I'm just Sports Chalet. And I've been doing this for 30 years. And I am not a friend of Rush. I never met him. And so I don't want to oversell this in the least, because he never did. Never oversold anything. I was at dinner last night with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and Jan Jenner and Carol Anderson. We had a wonderful time talking about Rush because they just loved listening to him. And I became friends with him because Carol was listening to me, and Jan came down, found me, helped me out on a situation that I've been talking about on the radio. And so we were talking about Rush last night, and I said, there is just nobody in the business who does not owe him for being in the business. He saved AM radio. Now, a lot of talk radio has migrated to FM. At the time that the Fairness Doctrine was repealed in 1988, Rush persuaded the bigs, the suits, that he could make one show work everywhere. That was contra gospel. I think of my friend Tom Tradup, who's down in Dallas freezing, I think. I hope you folks get your heat back on soon. I really do. It's been a rough week for you. And Tom worked at every radio station in the world, as did Phil Boyce, two of the big suits at Salem. And they will tell you the same thing, that before Rush came along, everybody just did local. And they believed in local. And you couldn't break in with syndicated. And then Rush blew that up in 1988 with the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine, which is why he called Ronald Magnus, Ronald Reagan, Ronald the Great. By the way, there are some words that you'll always associate. He changed the language. Mr. Newt, my formerly nicotine-stained hands. There are ways that Rush changed the language. But to me, I got started in December of 1990 when KFI's George Oliva, who knew Rush very well, called me up out of the blue. I was running the Nixon Library and had left it to go do a law job. And he said, do you want to work in talk radio? And I said, well, that beats working. He said, Saturdays, 11 to 2. Sundays, 11 to 2. I'm in. Came on after Bill Press. Not long thereafter, a promo pops up. Rush Limbaugh, who's got a huge audience. Hugh Hewitt's a new guy on KFI. You ought to give him a listen. Real smart guy, lawyer. We're not going to hold that against him, blah, blah, blah. Rush would cut promos for anybody getting into the business. Now, I've talked to him, and I've emailed with him, but I never met the man. Just the way I meet you, over the radio. And talking to him when I needed to, and mostly email. Rush was accessible. The sort of things you don't know. I need books for a charity. I need a copy in the old days of The Way Things Ought to Be. It'd show up. Because Bo Snerdley, the other welded to Rush at the hip and the shoulder, consummate professional. They were both consummate professionals. They invented a medium. They changed America. George W. Bush would not have been president without Rush Limbaugh. Think about that. You don't win Florida, with all of its seniors. You don't win Florida by 527 votes without Rush. You actually don't win Florida without me, but you don't even get close without Rush. Donald Trump wouldn't have won in 2016 without Rush, who was skeptical and then warmed to him. In fact, Rush may have saved Clarence Thomas. I came into the studio on the Saturday after the Thomas fiasco, but I was fired up because I listened to Rush all week long. Rush changed a lot of seminal events in America. And so I'm just going to let you talk about him today. 1-800-520-1234. I have some guests. I have Dr. Oren. I have Nick Kristof, Tony Gonzalez, Chris Christie. I'll talk to them. I schedule them. And in the great tradition of being a gentleman, and Rush was. I know the haters are out there hating. They hate what he did, not who he was. And I think it's great that Rush battled an addiction and battled back from it. I think it's great that Rush lost his hearing and would not give up. Went and got the implants and talked about them. I think it's great that once a year Rush would raise more money for the charity. He would just blow and never said boo about it. He was there for everyone who was down. His brother David will tell you stories. David is a friend, but he will tell you stories that will make you cry. He just helped everybody, and he helped me. Because what did I know about talk radio? And all of a sudden you got Rush Limbaugh voicing promos for you, saying this Hewitt guy, lawyer, good, smart guy. I can remember hearing that saying, oh my gosh, Rush is doing that. I'm going to be okay on Saturday morning. I was 35 years old. I had no idea if I could do talk radio, but Rush Limbaugh was endorsing me. People were going to check me out on Saturday. And I could go on and on about the ways that he changed America. But I don't have to. I just want to let you folks tell everybody else. And I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And you know why? Because the left is going to try and ignore why Rush worked. And I want to tell you why he worked. He respected you. You were his friends. He gave dignity to every caller who wasn't a seminar caller. He loved his audience. He couldn't thank you enough. He battled cancer to the end. And he kept the same music, no gimmicks. And may I add, he is a comic genius. I can remember on the 55, which is a big freeway, I used to have to drive out to Riverside. When I was in my lawyering youth, I have to go from the coast out to Riverside, Moreno Valley. Always leave during rush, so I could it was, terrible commute. And Rush would be there, and one day he did Kennedy's in Jeopardy. It may be the funniest radio I have ever heard. Tears in the eye, funny radio. Tears in the eye, funny radio. Ted Lasso, funny radio. Rush Limbaugh was Ted Lassoing before Ted Lasso, and people don't know that because they let their politics get in the way of what a wonderful man he was and what a genius communicator he was. Two people built and maintained huge audiences for 20 years in America over the last 30 years. Oprah and Rush. And Rush actually went 30 years. Oprah didn't. Mike in Fairfax, Virginia. What say you, Mike?
Hugh, I want to give my anecdotal story. I think your wife went to Davis. I was in the area at the time. I knew him from the local television station. He used to come on and argue sometimes with the mayor of Davis or the city council. I remember it was about deployment of ships in the Persian Gulf when Reagan did that. And I didn't associate him at first until he came on to his national show. I never heard him in Sacramento, and if I just turned on the station there, I used to listen to the old KGO or something like that in San Francisco stations. And one day I was driving, I think it was right past Berkeley. I was about to get on the Bay Bridge to San Francisco, and that's the first time I can actually remember. That was the first time in August of '88 I ever heard of him. And it wasn't until a couple of days later I associated, the guy I saw on TV on the local Sacramento station, that's him.
That's him. And once you make that association, you never forget. Mike, thank you. 1-800-520-1234, Rush Day on The Hugh Hewitt Show.